Believe it or not, we're coming up on 2 months of the war in Iran, and we wanted to check in with Barak Ravid, Axios' hyper-plugged-in global security correspondent. Barak Ravid, thank you for your epic coverage of these historic days. Believe it or not, we're talking on day 47 of the war. Coming up on 7 weeks, are we nearer or further from a solution?
Can we be both? Because yeah, I know
It's an honest answer.
yeah. No, I know it's on the one hand, I think we're getting closer to a deal that would end the war. I think over the last 24 hours, there's been some progress in the negotiations between the US and Iran through Pakistani mediation. But at the same time, I think President Trump is also building the option for the talks to collapse, and that he will have to, you know, maybe resume the war and do what he threatened to do before the ceasefire started, to go on a bombing campaign against Iranian critical infrastructure facilities. I would not rule that out. I mean, the U.S. has a blockade. The ceasefire is still holding. They are negotiating, but we have a historical record of 2 rounds of negotiation already that did not end with a deal, but rather ended with war. So I think that option is definitely on the table.
Well, and Barak, the president, said on Truth Social that he was leaving all the weapons, ships, service members in place.
Yes. So I think, by the way, all those assets, the ships, the fighter jets, the air defense systems, I don't think they're going anywhere in the near future, even if they do get a deal, because any deal that will take place in the immediate time will be a very thin and narrow deal that just is sort of like a declaration of principles. You'll need afterwards to hammer out a detailed agreement. You'll have to implement it. Just I'll give you one example. A key element to any such agreement will be taking out the highly enriched uranium from Iran. If you want to do that, this is not something that happens overnight, not over a week, not over a month. This is a long term undertaking. So I think the US, in order to make sure this thing is implemented, will have considerable forces in the region for quite some time, even if it gets a deal. If it doesn't get a deal, then it's obvious that those forces will not only stay in the region, but will, resume fire.
And Barak, you said it could be longer than months. You think that U.S. assets will be downrange for years? A year?
I think that overall, this crisis has the potential to last at least a year. I'm not talking about the high intensity fighting. I think that's sort of behind us. Maybe it will resume for a short period of time if the ceasefire talks collapse. But overall, the crisis itself, the time that the region will stabilize again, the time where the US will be able to get back to the same military posture it had before January 2026, I think we're looking at, at, at least it could at least be a year.
Barak, you said at the top that we're both closer and further or farther. My grandmother will tell me which is correct. Let's unpack both of those. So you're just up, you just popped a headline: US and Iran inch toward framework deal to end war. Now, the word framework there, doing a lot of work. The great thing about these videos is we can take viewers behind the scenes. Take us behind the scenes of inching toward a framework deal. How would you say that over chips and salsa?
So, I think you're looking at the one pager, more or less, okay, with several general lines that address the core issues of this conflict: the uranium enrichment, the highly enriched uranium stockpile, the Strait of Hormuz, the end of hostilities, long-term end of hostilities, and the regional situation. So, I think it's not going to be more than, one page or 2 pages that basically set the stage for what the principles that both sides agree on. But, this is in many ways, without getting such a framework, it's very hard to continue negotiating because the parties don't really agree what to negotiate on. Once you know, for example, okay, we decided that Iran will suspend its uranium enrichment for, I don't know, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. That's a principle. Afterwards, you need to negotiate, okay, how is this happening? How do we monitor? What the timetable for doing that? There are a lot of details, and those are for, technical experts. But if you don't get an agreement on this big principle, then it means you can't get a deal.
That's helpful. So that's the optimistic case. As we're about to enter week 8 of this war, in what sense are the sides as dug in or more dug in than ever?
Well, I think first, this war, we were told, was supposed to be 4 to 6 weeks. We are now at week, entering the 8th week.
And that
Uh,
was going to be the hot phase, right, Barak? That
yes,
was,
yes, yes. But, it could still become hot again. We're still not out of the woods. It could go either um, towards some sort of a status quo, meaning no deal, but no escalation. You have the blockade in place, and the Trump administration will try to what Secretary of Treasury Bessent called economic fury. Will try to basically squeeze Iran, choke Iran economically more and more and more, without resuming kinetic action. That's a scenario. Another scenario is obviously you get the deal and ceasefire extended, and you start seeing a way out. But there's also, again, as we spoke, the option of war resumes, Trump goes and bombs the Iranian infrastructure, the Iranians attack Gulf countries' infrastructure, including oil facilities, and you find yourself in a crisis that is even bigger than the one we've been in for the last 2 months. I have to say, at the moment, I think both sides don't want that. Both sides want a deal. That's the interesting part. Both sides have made, at least for now, have made a political decision. Both President Trump and the Iranian Supreme Leader Mujtaba Khamenei have made a clear political decision that they want this ceasefire. And this political decision to this moment hasn't changed.
and in a sentence, in smart brevity, why does the US want a deal and why does Iran want a deal?
The U.S. wants a deal because I think it understands that militarily, even if it continues, it's not going to get much more than it got until now. And in order to get much more than it got until now, it will need a significant ground operation, which I don't think President Trump wants. And on the Iranian side, I think the Iranians realize that the assets that they have, especially the enriched uranium, the highly enriched uranium, is becoming a liability and not an asset. And therefore, now it's time to cash in on it and try and get a deal.
Barak, a very basic catch me up question. How did the Pakistanis come to be such central players? Vice President Vance last weekend was in Islamabad for these negotiations. You just reported that Pakistani officials, a Pakistani delegation, had gone to Tehran.
Yeah. Well, it started during the transition, to be honest. The Pakistanis had a very bad relationship with the Biden administration. Very bad. So from day one, after the election, after Trump won the election, they started um, a charm offensive with the Trump administration, including significant counterterrorism cooperation that led to catching some of those who were involved in the Abbey Gate bombing in Afghanistan, where 13 U.S. Service members were killed. And Trump spoke about it in his first State of the Union a few weeks after he assumed office. And Trump built a very close relationship with Asim Munir, the commander of the Pakistani army. In Pakistan, if you're the commander of the army, you're a very important person. Okay? Some would say that you're at least as important as the prime minister. Some would say you are more important than the prime minister. And he came to Washington and he had lunch with Donald Trump and they hit it off. And I think the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Mr. Sharif, also made the same effort to be best friends with Donald Trump, and it worked for him, especially around the peace agreement, the deal to end the war in Gaza. Pakistan was part of it. Sharif was one of the first ones who said, "I'm going to join the Board of Peace." Sharif even suggested sending soldiers to Gaza. Um, and I think the Pakistanis did a lot of work to get closer to Trump, while at the same time, their arch enemies, India and Prime Minister Modi, had a very tense relationship with Trump and the Trump administration. So I think this is where it all started. And when the war with Iran started, the Pakistanis are, they're in the neighborhood, they're in the heart of this neighborhood, and they have a big Shia population. And for them, it was a significant interest that this war will end as soon as possible, both for domestic security reasons with the Shia minority, both for economic reasons, they're dependent on the Strait of Hormuz, and both geopolitically because they wanted to have stability in the region and show the U.S. that they can be a mediator that can help getting peace.
And flip side, is Pakistan a trusted party in Tehran with the regime?
Everything is relative. Um, for the Iranians, the Omanis were always the number one mediators, but the Omanis and the U.S. are in a huge crisis, and this is not an option. The next option was one of the Gulf countries, but Iran started attacking the Gulf countries, especially Qatar, who used to be a mediator. So Qatar is not relevant anymore. Who's left? The Pakistanis, who came and said, we will do it. We have relatively good relationship with Iran, good relationship with the US. We're in the neighborhood. We talk to everybody. So there you go. Turkey and Egypt also joined as the back office, working mostly behind the scenes. But this is how the Pakistanis got to this mediation. This is why the Iranians agreed for their mediation.
Barak, how is the war affecting life in Israel, where you used to live and still have friends and relatives?
Well, I think this war for people in America, this war has been going on for 8 weeks, right? For people in Israel, this war has been going on for 2.5 years. That's so the average Israeli, for him, the last month was, just another escalation and another chapter in this very, very long war. And people, kids did not go to school, people did not go to work, they were under rocket fire, not on a daily basis, on an hourly basis. The Iranians and Hezbollah and the Houthis from Yemen all fired rockets. A lot of it was in the middle of the night. People did not sleep. Not everybody. A lot of people have safe rooms in their homes, but not all of them. Especially in Tel Aviv, a lot of people don't have them. They need to maybe even go either to the basement of the building or to another building nearby in the middle of the night. It's so I think if there's one thing that you need to know is that psychologically, it had a huge effect on people, on the average person. I'm not talking about politics here. On the politics, I think, obviously, the Netanyahu government wanted this war. This was part of its plan. We all know that. And Benjamin Netanyahu, one of the reasons, I'm not saying it's the only reason, but one of the reasons was that, he is fighting for his political life. There are elections in a few months. He's standing trial. If he loses the election, he's most likely going to jail. So for him, this was not only about foreign policy and national security. It was also that. I'm not saying it's not all cynical and political, but it is also cynical and political. And therefore, I think he hoped that this war would take place a bit differently and would develop a bit differently, would give him a real boost in the polls. By the way, I thought so too. Okay. I was sure he's going to get a boost. He did not. Not one seat moved from, left to right, and from his opponents to his camp, to Netanyahu's camp. He did not get any political boost out of this war at the moment. If anything, he has somewhat lost support. Although, again, in most polls, it's like just the status quo continues. And at least for now, look, I'm giving a disclaimer here. I don't buy the polls anymore. I just,
Right. Right.
anywhere, not only in Israel, anywhere, but considering it's the only tool we have. So, the if elections were held today, then according to the polls, he would lose. He would not be the prime minister, and he would likely go to jail. And this is after him getting this, thing he always fantasizes about. His whole political career was about this, mega war against Iran, trying to take out their nuclear weapons, take out their missiles, topple the regime. I'm not saying there were no achievements in this war, but politically for Netanyahu, at least for now, it did not produce what he was hoping for.
Barak, as the war heads to 2 months, what can we tell about where President Trump's head is at, both from what you hear from your sources behind the scenes and how the president is playing his cards publicly?
Look, I think Trump is in the same place he has been before the war in June, the 12-day war in June 2025, and before this war started, and when he assumed office. Trump wants a deal with Iran. This is a fact, okay? But he wants the deal on his terms. This is also a fact. And if he doesn't get a deal, he is ready to use significant military force to punish Iran. This is also a fact. The Iranians miscalculated twice already when first in April, May 2025, they did not negotiate, did not have a sense of urgency regarding the negotiation with Donald Trump. They did not understand that this is not the status quo anymore. Trump is not a status quo president, not on domestic issues, not on foreign policy, and definitely not on Iran. The Iranians did not understand that. They miscalculated. They got the war in June. They got the B-2 bomber attack. They got Midnight Hammer. Then the Iranians had another chance to negotiate after the protest in Iran. It was even a narrower window of getting a deal. Only 3 meetings, 3 rounds of negotiations. The Iranians did not understand that when Trump said 10, 15 days, he was not bullshitting. That's why he said 10, 15 days, and after 10, 15 days, the war started. Okay? They miscalculated, didn't understand that this is not the same as they got used to for years and years and years of people, kicking the can down the road. So the second war happened. And now they have another chance. The question is, are they going to miscalculate again and say, well, after 8 weeks, the biggest military power around the world, and its ally, which is also a big military power, ganged up on us. We survived. We're still standing. Our country is destroyed, but, the regime still stands. Therefore, we won, and we shouldn't give any concessions, and we can, we can play a regular game. If they'll do that, they are risking miscalculating for the third time in less than a year. And I'm not sure it's a good idea for them. On the other hand, by the way, I'm pretty sure that if they say yes to what Trump wants, the pace that he will give them, the returns for the benefits, the tangible things in return will be very fast. As the same way that the new Syrian government uh, basically got from Trump in a record speed. All the sanctions came off. All the U.S. Syrian relation were went through a speed of light reset. I think Trump is ready to do the same thing with Iran if they accept his demands. If the Iranians will come tomorrow and say, you know what, Mr. President, take the uranium, just take it. Come tomorrow, take all of it, and we're ready. You know what? 20 years suspension of uranium enrichment, no problem. 25, not 20, 25. If they do that, the next day, Trump is taking off all the sanctions. Trump is calling back the military, and Trump is starting doing business with Iran like never before. I think this is what the Iranians don't understand with Donald Trump. They don't understand how dangerous it is to miscalculate, and they don't understand how beneficiary it could be for them to play ball with him.
He wants a deal. Barak, Ravid, thank you for your extraordinary coverage.
Thank you, Mike.